I'm going to show you how to build an off-grid T-Beam Supreme Meshtastic radio that'll let you send long-range encrypted text messages, GPS data, and more to your friends without using internet, Wi-Fi, or cell coverage. The way it works is the T-Beam LoRa radio will pair with your cell phone over Bluetooth, which you'll interface through the free open source Meshtastic app. Now, I'll provide you with a parts list, multiple sources for getting these really hard to get radios, where to download a free 3D printable frame, or where to get one if you don't have a 3D printer, and I'll tell you all the hardware you need to get everything assembled. Then I'll walk through the assembly process, which is a little bit more challenging than a basic T-Beam, because you actually have to disassemble the radio in order to get it inside the frame. Then I'll show you how to flash the Meshtastic firmware, because this actually didn't come with Meshtastic on it. It had something called SoftRF, which is some sort of aviation awareness tool. And you're going to want to pay special attention to this because the flashing process is a little bit different than the regular T-Beam. So the first thing you're going to need, obviously, is a T-Beam Supreme radio. It comes in a box just like this. These are really hard to come by right now. I'll leave a few different links on where to find these in stock in the description below. So you get a radio, an antenna. The most important thing is the frequency you choose when you're buying the radio needs to be, if you're in the United States, it needs to be 915 megahertz. That is critical in order to operate this radio legally in the US. You also get some pins in here for soldering stuff to the radio. That's totally over my head. I'm a total beginner with this stuff. We're just going to use it exactly out of the box as is without any modifications. Now on the back, there is an 18650 holder already installed, so you can power it by 18650. There's also a USB-C connector at the bottom, so you can power it by USB cable. It does include a micro SD card slot. However, Meshtastic doesn't support that yet. That's just sort of a dead feature there. But the Supreme is the top of the line, best of the best T-Beam that you can get right now. So you've got quite a few options for building a Meshtastic radio. Rack Whiz Block is a common one. Lilygo has a bunch. Heltec is also a really popular one. So the T-Beam that we chose even has a number of versions you can choose from, but the one we're building in this video is the T-Beam Supreme. So this is the one with all the bells and whistles that you can get. This comparison, I'll have a link in the description below so you can kind of see how it compares. All right, so a few different places you can try to look to buy these radios. I'll have these links in the description below. First, Rockland. I've heard a lot of great things about Rockland, but as you can see right now, they're out of stock. There's also Lilygo's website directly. You can try buying from them. Again, make sure you're selecting the correct frequency. There's two different GPS versions as well, which I'll go over in a second. So the U-Blocks version is sold out right now, and the L76K version is sold out right now as well. I got mine from AliExpress. Even some of these versions are sold out as well. I got the L76K version. This is the GPS. So the difference between the U-Blocks and the L76, first of all, obviously, is the price, but the difference is the precision of the GPS. So the U-Blocks is going to be down to a centimeter level precision, which is insane. The L76 has standard precision of 1 to 5 meters, which is more than adequate for my purposes. So a few different options there. We'll see how stock does over the next few months here. Meshtastic is kind of blowing up right now, but I'll leave all these links in the description below. I'll probably try to find it on Amazon as well for you, so you have all these options. All right, the next thing you're going to want to find is an 18650 battery. As you can see, the T-Beam is already set up with an 18650 holder, so you just need to pop a battery in. And the best place I've found to source 18650 batteries is 18650batterystore.com. So if you click on this right here, the one thing you have to make sure is to filter by flat top. I guess there's a few different types of 18650s, so you need to make sure you're buying a flat top battery. There's a ton of different options here. I don't really know. I mean, there's some differences in the capacity that you can look at, but as far as branding, I can't really recommend. I have no clue which ones are better than the others. So that's totally up to you. As far as the case goes, this is my favorite right here by Tony G. He's got a ton of different 3D models for different types of Meshtastic radios. So I'll leave a link below for you to download this if you have a 3D printer. If not, he does have an Etsy store where you can buy them. However, as of right now, he doesn't have any in stock, unfortunately. He does license his designs with Rockland, so I'll link that as well. But as you can see, a lot of these are out of stock here too. But hopefully they'll get back in stock shortly. So here's what the 3D printed case looks like. There's actually a ton of different options when you download the files. I'll go through that in a second, but at the minimum, you're gonna need like the back cover. So this is what's gonna cover the battery on the back. This is the frame. So there's some disassembly you'll need to do with the radio in order to get it to insert into the frame. And then you'll need a front cover as well. Now this does have a place to insert a like acrylic window here. I don't have that here. You can also point out my terrible support structure removal job here. I got to clean that up a little bit better. That's kind of my only complaint about this design is you have to print it with supports, because even if you print it upside down, all of these hexagons will need support, but and like these corners here would need support. If you print it this way, the whole entire bottom here needs support. But you know, it's not going to be seen anywhere, so it's not that big of a deal. And then you'll need to print out 3 buttons, which will be inserted into the side of the frame right here. So on the Printables website, you'll click the download button, and this is what the files look like when you open it. So ton of files here. You don't need to print out all of them. There are different options. So if you click on the PDF here, it'll kind of explain the different options. So right here, minimum required files. So I chose the 18650 flat, which is this one right here. So it has just a little flat spot on the bottom here to make it so it doesn't tip over super easily. Now the T-Beam Supreme front, you've got a ton of different options here, and those are just different designs. So you can kind of go through each one and see which design you like the best. And there's 2 major versions here. One, if you're gonna do the insert. So if you're not gonna use the laser cut acrylic window, you would do the no insert one. And now that I'm thinking about it, this is the one I did because I wasn't planning on inserting the window. So I think the one I did is this one right here, the hexagons one. So I think that's this one right here. I think the number 2 is just a little bit of a bigger design. And then the button, you're gonna need 3 of them again, and an optional dust cover. If you have TPU filament, the flexible filament, you can print out a dust cover for the buttons. And you'll see down here at the bottom, the frame has 2 different versions depending on whether you are gonna use the button cover or not. So the one I used does not have the button cover. So it's just missing a little thing right here where that would snap into place. Now, aside from that, you're gonna need some hardware. I just got this kit off of Amazon. I'll put a link to it in the description. So it has a big assortment of different socket head cap screws. So you're gonna need 4 M3 20mm socket head screws with nuts and 2 M2 12mm screws with nuts as well. All right, so let's get this radio assembled in the frame. Now, in order to do that, we need to disassemble a lot of this stuff here in order to get the antenna mounted, the GPS antenna relocated, and the radio secured in the frame. The first step is to disconnect the LoRa and GPS antenna connections. Next, we want to flip this over. This is the GPS antenna up top here. It's just adhered. It has a little bit of adhesive on the bottom here, mounting it to the battery holder. So we want to gently try to pry that up and disconnect it. Next, you'll want to unscrew the 5 Phillips head screws. There's a 6th screw on the other side. You should probably get that one first because it kind of just comes apart once you get the 5 out. You want to be careful with everything here, not to damage the ribbon on the display, but the S3 core just pivots up and comes out of the base. Next, we'll want to flip everything over so we can peel back the adhesive that's holding the antenna wires. I'm going to set the GPS antenna aside for now. And you want to loosen the antenna pigtail and remove it from the base. Then you're going to want to position the pigtail behind and underneath the screen ribbon, making sure it's above the connector. So you don't want it down here. You want it up here above where you see that white connector where it connects to the board. The GPS antenna will go back just like this. So it's going to go back in its original channel right here. And then you're going to fold everything back together, just making sure you're not pinching any wires. Forgot to remove this screw right here. All right, so it's a little sketchy, but you've got the antenna wire underneath the ribbon here above this white connector. So this way on the other side of the connector, not down here, so up here. And then the antenna wire for the GPS, in theory, would follow this channel, but because I don't have the adhesive, it's just going to kind of be chilling out. So we're going to carefully get this clear frame back on the base, and we want the antenna wires to be coming up right where the boot button is. So there's a couple of channels here on the clear frame where those antennas come up. So the GPS one is on the right, and the LoRa is on the left. This is super sketchy. So to help with this, I'm just going to take a little piece of tape and tape the ends of each of the antennas to where they need to come up on the clear frame here, because that's kind of the most important thing. All right, so now I'll bring this behind the ribbon. All right, next you're gonna grab your little buttons, pop those into the holes in the frame. Now be careful not to flip the frame over while you're handling it during these next few steps. That's easy to forget. So the next thing you're gonna do is unthread the nut on the top of the antenna connector. I think this is called an SMA connector. So there's a nut and a washer. So on the frame, you can see there's a hex shape right there for the base of that SMA connector, and then it goes right through the top here. So you'll take the radio, the antenna is going to feed through first. You want to make sure that goes all the way in and engages with that hex opening in the 3D printed frame. Just like that. So pull it all the way in. Oh, it looks like there was actually two washers here, a lock washer and a split ring washer, and then thread the nut back on. Now, I really like this design because it removes the strain of the antenna away from the board itself. So the antenna is reinforced by the 3D printed frame, which is great because if you drop it, you don't have to worry about breaking your radio. And I just dropped my buttons. The GPS antenna is going to slide right in this slot right here. I just did it again. It's a little tricky because of the adhesive. I'll try to get it in there a little bit more like that. Then the radio pops into the frame. Now, I printed my frame without supports. You can see where the nuts are supposed to capture in there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're kind of messed up. So hopefully this will work out. I would definitely recommend using supports if you are going to be printing this out. So the bolt is going to come in from above and screw it down into the frame. I'm just going to install each bolt first, and then we'll add the nuts after. Make sure your buttons aren't binding up. Also, double check that you're not pinching any of the antenna wires before you screw this in. So the clear block on this side seems to be a little bit higher than the one on this side. So I'm going to go with 16 millimeter bolts for this side. The other ones just don't grab, they're not long enough, so they don't grab the nut really well. Here you can see the 16 millimeter bolt sticks out quite a bit. Yeah, so again, I use 16 millimeter M2 bolts here and 12 millimeter M2 bolts on this side. I probably could have gotten away with 12 millimeter over here if I had used supports and the nut capture holes weren't messed up, but I just went with 16 for simplicity. Now check your antenna connections again. I just noticed my GPS antenna got pulled out. All right, so that is what it looks like mounted in the frame. There's your USB-C access port. You've got your buttons right here. So those will all click the buttons on the board here. Then next you're going to take whatever front cover you printed. If you do have the acrylic window, you can put that in. You can cut something out with scissors, or if you have a laser cutter that can cut clear acrylic, you can cut that out. I'm running this without the window. So this just snaps on the front like this. Yeah, it looks like the GPS antenna needs to be flush with the front there. So I'm just going to push this in a little bit more so it's flush. And I'm going to make sure the wire is in. There's a little cutout right there. It's kind of hard to see. There's a little cutout right there. I want to make sure the wire is positioned over that cutout. Then I'll pop this on. Make sure I'm not pinching anything. It's not closing all the way. Now the screws left over from the radio you don't need because we replaced them with our own. And before you put the back cover on, you want to put the battery in, but you can't do that until you screw in the antenna. So go ahead and mount your antenna. This is the one that came with it. Again, for the 915 frequency, it does have a pivot point right here, which is nice. So it collapses down, and this can spin 360 degrees even after this is tightened. But you need to make sure the antenna is installed before you put the battery in. Otherwise, you can burn out the radio. Double check the polarity. So plus, minus, and check the battery plus right here. So make sure the battery's seated all the way. And the back of the frame has this little cutout area to match up with the GPS antenna. So it's not symmetrical. You do have to make sure it's oriented the correct way. Now to secure the frame, you need some M320 nuts, which apparently are not in this kit. I didn't realize that. This only goes up to 16 millimeter. Don't you just love spending almost $1 on a little piece of hardware like this? Again, I'll make sure to link the correct hardware kit that does include the 20 millimeter M3 bolts. So don't worry about that, but let's go ahead and finish assembling this. So that gap actually closed up pretty well. I'm sure it seems like maybe part of it was just some slight warping with this top cover here. All right, so now that you have your T-Beam assembled, we now have to flash Meshtastic onto it. So mine came with SoftRF installed, which is a completely different software or firmware. So we need to install Meshtastic. So before plugging it into your computer, go to flasher.meshtastic.org. When you click the target device dropdown, you're going to choose the T-Beam S3 core, then select the latest stable firmware version, and click flash. So this will tell you all the updates in the firmware that you selected. Scroll down, click continue. Now step 1 right here applies to the T-Beam Supreme. See how it says ESP32S3 based? So basically if the radio is on, you have to make sure you turn it off first. So that's going to be the middle button that I have colored green right here. You want to hold that button down for several seconds. I think it's like 4 seconds or so. The screen turns off, and then you're going to take a USB-C cable that's connected to your computer, and as you're plugging it in, you want to hold down the boot button. So that's the button that's all the way by itself over here shown on the left-hand side. So I'm going to hold that button down while plugging the USB-C cable in, and then I can release the button. So you'll notice that no screen comes on. That's totally normal. We can just set that aside and then continue with flashing Meshtastic. So we'll do a full erase and install, click the button, and we're going to select the USB device, which is our radio. Now, if you're not sure which device is the actual radio, you can hold down the start menu key and the letter X. That'll pull up a menu where you can select the device manager. And in the device manager, if you go down to ports, you should be able to see the device right here. So if you unplug the radio and plug it back in, whatever device pops up here, that's how you know which one you need to select when that window pops up in the browser. Another thing I should mention is you need to use a Chrome browser to use this web-based flasher. Now, if you still don't see the radio, you might have to install some drivers. I'll leave a link to these drivers in the description below. But going back to the flasher, I'll click that flash and install button, select the radio, and click connect. Now, it's going to go through erasing and flashing, installing Meshtastic onto the radio. But you're going to notice at the very end here, you'll get this weird message. Now, at the end here, you'll see it says waiting for download. That totally threw me off because I thought, you know, there was still stuff that it was trying to do. But apparently it's all done. You can just unplug the radio and you're good to go. So I'll go ahead and hold down the power button. And after a little bit of time, Meshtastic will start up. So eventually you get to this Bluetooth screen. So open up the Meshtastic app on your phone and you can see it's already recognizing. So it's asking for this code on the screen. We'll tap OK and we're now connected and we are prompted to continue the configuration. So this is Android. iPhone is a little bit different. I'll probably do a video just showing the differences between iPhone and Android. So over on the right-hand side, we're just going to set the region. So we want US, which is the option right down at the very bottom. And then if we want to further configure the radio, we can go to the three dots at the top and select radio configuration. So I'm just going to keep all the default settings for now, but we'll check out the LoRa settings and you'll see that the modem preset is long fast, which is kind of the most common setting. So from here, we can go back to the chat screen and in the default chat, we can try a test message. And with my other phone and my other radio, you can see we received that message right here. So I have my iPhone connected to this T-Beam right here, and we can see that we received that message. All right, so that's everything you need to know to get set up with a T-Beam Supreme. I'm gonna be doing some more videos on Meshtastic, so make sure to subscribe if you want to kind of explore this really awesome network with me. I have a number of whiz blocks on the way as well. I'm gonna be building some solar nodes and distributing them and just kind of seeing what we can do with this. Just a reminder, if you do want to build one of these, I'll have the entire parts list in kind of a succinct order of instructions and kind of skipping over some of the mistakes I made while I was building this in this video. But other than that, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.